Being an artist is a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because you're able to connect to people. You're able to make people feel understood, to make them feel less alone in the world. You have the ability to tell stories that might otherwise not be told. It's a great privilege to be an artist. You get to live many lives in a way through your art and develop a sense of profound understanding of yourself and of the world. But it can come with its own burden. The deep desire to create is a heavy one, and I wouldn't even call it a desire. I think it's a need, a necessary action that has to take place, because if it doesn't, there could be dire consequences. Hi everyone, and welcome back to my corner of the internet, where I talk about life, magic, and everything in between. My name's Bea, and today's video topic is quite personal. It's what I would tell myself as a young artist. Now, for context, I work in the film industry in New York City, so I'm lucky enough to have created a life in which I get to be an artist for a living. But as a creative, starting out is really tough because people don't believe in you yet. No one is willing to take a risk on you yet, and so you spend a lot of time strategizing, marketing, repositioning who you are so you can land a job and pay your rent. This process can really impact your sense of self and your self-worth, so it can be a really taxing time. However, it can also be a really freeing time because no one really expects anything of you yet. You're free to experiment, to create, to push boundaries. So the freedom you have to experiment and explore is unlike any other. So this leads me to the first thing I would say to my younger self. Number one is to learn to enjoy the process. When I was starting out, I wanted to jump onto the biggest projects I could. I wanted to land the biggest clients, and I wanted to be the big fish in whatever pond I was in. And sometimes I succeeded in getting those things because I was willing to do anything that they needed. But when I look back at that time, I spent so much time looking forward, looking towards the next project, looking for the next client, trying to make it, that I never looked up from the grind. And I never really enjoyed the process of creation. I was in such a rush. I spent so much time worrying and was laser focused on success and making it that I didn't notice any small moments of triumph. And I didn't take any inventory of the things I learned along the way. And though I think ambition is necessary in moving forward, you have to remember that you're still a young artist. Be willing to become a student. Revel in the process of learning how art is created in the world. Be humble enough to ask questions and be bold enough to ask for guidance. Make mistakes and take risks. Learn to enjoy the process because the process is never ending. And if you continue to look forward without looking up and looking around, burnout is really likely. As you advance in your career, you will always be in progress. And that's a good thing. It'll keep you nimble and flexible for the ever-changing world around you. The second thing I would say is try and stay as excited as you can for as long as you can. In my first few years of working, I remember meeting older people in the industry and being really confused because I could tell that they were exhausted, jaded. They found everything to be a burden. And I didn't understand because in my head I was like, oh my gosh, we get to make film for a living. This is crazy. And so every day was an exciting day. And I promised myself whenever I saw or met one of these people that I would never become like them. I would never forget how cool my life is that I get to make art. Well, fast forward a few years, and I started slipping. Things I used to think were cool became really boring and mundane. It became my day-to-day. I no longer had the thrill of starting something new because I got used to it. I think this is a really common experience, but if I had to do it again, I would remind myself that making art is cool and that I shouldn't take any of it for granted. I would make friends with people who aren't in the industry so that I always have an outside perspective of what I do, and it'll keep my vision of what I do a little bit fresher. I would help younger artists who are just starting out just to see things from their perspective again. And if I really couldn't find the excitement anymore, I would tell myself to create it. I would tell myself to put energy into something that lights the fire, a project, a personal project, rather than settling for comfort. Number 3, I would tell myself, don't let people take advantage of you, and remember that this is a business. This is a big one. When I was growing up, I had the notion that I would be an artist, and when my parents would try to talk to me about money, I would say, I don't care. I'll be a starving artist. I just want to make art for a living. But let's be so real. Money talks, and every working artist has to deal with it. So I would tell my younger self to be educated in financial matters. I would learn how money moves through my industry. I would talk to the people who handle the money. In the film industry, it's the producers. I would learn which part of the industry makes money and which part doesn't. I would also pay attention to the work culture of different parts of the industry. I think one of the main things that young artists don't think about is the rest of their life outside of their job, because they're so passionate about what they do that they're willing to sacrifice everything to be able to make it. And that can lead to sometimes borderline, if not real, abuse at work, because you're so willing to do anything. I definitely had a few instances where people mistreated me, employers mistreated me, and I actually didn't even realize they did until a few years later, when I had worked other places and found out that other places don't do that. At the time, I thought that that's how everything worked, but I had a few older friends who told me that that wasn't okay, and thankfully they did, because I realized what was going on. Remember that when you're a professional artist, you're dealing with a business. You're dealing with many businesses. And so become savvy with the industry. Pay attention to contracts. Negotiate. Of course, be willing to extend yourself and work hard because you are still starting out, and so you do have to prove yourself in a way. But also know that you are a professional and there are boundaries. You should be treated as a professional, even if you are new to this. You deserve dignity. Number 4, I would say learn business and marketing basics. This point piggybacks off the previous point. I would go a step further and maybe take a marketing 101 class or an intro to business class, because I've seen way too many artists become limited because they don't know how to market themselves. Creatives speak a technical and artistic language, but in order to become a paid professional, we need to be able to speak to non-creatives, particularly business people. We should understand their priorities and be able to position ourselves to appeal to them. Now, I'm not saying to abandon your integrity or your art or your creative process, but learning their language, it becomes easier to communicate and negotiate when you know what's going on in their mind. In fact, knowing their language makes it easier to protect yourself and your art, and actually might help produce your art. I was lucky enough to be raised by 2 parents in the business world, and so I have like a business language kind of innately inside of me, and that has helped time and time again in meetings where I have to present and pitch my idea. I'm able to pitch it in a way that business people understand, and so they give me the funds to actually produce the idea. So learning the basics of business is never a bad thing. On another note, when you work at different places, look around and pay attention. Observe how the company is run, how creatives are managed, how art is managed. Internships or assistant or junior positions are perfect for doing this. Just because your job might be easy doesn't mean you gotta switch off your brain the whole time. Look around. When I was starting out, I worked as a runner for a post-production house. which basically means I got coffee and did errands for the whole office. I was washing dishes, getting food orders, doing really menial things that didn't require a lot of my talent. But I kept my head up and watched how people dealt with clients. I watched how they were treated. I watched how editors were treated. I watched how editors treated clients. I watched how producers handled artist egos and how they handled money troubles. I learned so much from that job. Many valuable skills I still carry to this day. But if I just focused on the menial tasks I was doing, I would have never acquired any of those skills. Number 5. Being an artist is who you are, no matter what people think or how you pay your rent. Being an artist is more than just a career choice. It's a way of living. The reality is that a lot of artists will not be able to sustain their way of living through their art alone. And so many people will have to take on another full-time job or a part-time job or even multiple part-time jobs. And there is no shame in that. Life requires practical choices. And being a working artist is really hard. Many times the job won't have anything to do with the creative process at all. Sometimes people take that really personally. They let it dictate their life to the point where they fully identify with their new job. And they no longer think of themselves as artists. And that becomes really disheartening. But that isn't true. Being an artist is not just a job title. It's a way of seeing and experiencing and expressing. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of processing. Make sure that when you work on something that isn't creatively fulfilling or creative at all, to remember that you are an artist. No matter how long it's been, you can always return to art. Number 6. Remember to just make art for yourself sometimes. It'll replenish you. Now, this point is important to remember if you want to prevent or minimize burnout. You will soon learn that making art for money can be very taxing, not just on the mind, but on the heart. So when you spend all your time making art for other people, you have to purposely carve out time to make art for yourself. Block out a part of your week and create what you want. And when you are too tired to create, spend time looking for inspiration, whether that be in nature, in social events, in ingesting the art of others. Keep your relationship to art alive and active. It'll replenish your soul. Thanks for listening. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. What would you tell yourself as a younger artist? I'll see you next time. Bye!